What's up, collectors? DK here with Collector's Impact, and today we are going to talk about MetaZoo, as this brand new card game has definitely taken the world by storm, and I have done a bit of analysis on it and wanted to go ahead and share that with you guys, get your opinion on it as well, just have a nice open dialogue about the investment potential for this game, and discuss 7 key things that I have identified to go ahead and categorize and bring up when it comes to the short-term and long-term investment potential and or lack thereof for this game. If you are interested in that discussion, you have come to the right place. Definitely sit back and relax, as it's probably going to be a pretty lengthy video, but it should be plenty informative. There's lots and lots to discuss. If you're new to the channel, right here, this background image is one of my favorite images that I love to use on the channel, as it is an actual photograph from inside the LGS that I used to manage. So a little bit of background on me. I used to manage an LGS. It was a sports card and gaming card store, and I did that for the better part of 10 years, and those were 10 of the craziest and best years of my life. And though I'm not in the physical location anymore, I still personally am very involved in the collectibles space. I keep up with it pretty regularly. I'm very involved in it. And yeah, it's definitely, you could say, a passion of mine. So I'm here on YouTube just sharing knowledge and perspective and catching up with the community as well and learning things as I go along too. Now, with that said, this is not investment advice. That's not the point of the video. So there's my little disclaimer on that. We're just talking speculation here with the current knowledge that we have on these cards and the situations around the cards. Now, with all of that said, let's go ahead and jump into the 7 main points that I have come up with to consider when talking about investing in MetaZoo for both short-term and long-term potential. So the structure of this video will be, of course, the 7 points with their positives and negatives, and then we will do a wrap-up discussion on short-term versus long-term, as well as any other points and things of note at the end. All right, let's jump into point number 1. So when it comes to this card game and investing in this card game, or at least getting involved with it, it's very important to know the target audience for the game. So this game is kind of, I would say it's a perfect storm in the marketplace right now. If this game would have released 5 years ago, it would have been, in my opinion, based on what I was seeing in the space at that time, this game would have been an immediate flop. It's the timing of it could not be better for what it is. And what I mean by this is, essentially, it appears to me that the audience for this game are people that grew up in the 90s and early 2000s who are now adults, but still into the collectibles space as a general rule. In other words, people like me, and probably you watching out there, this game is made to tug on those nostalgia strings when it comes to things like old school Pokemon cards and Magic cards and things from the original era of those types of card games, and it actually does a really good job of this. I personally did not know that it was going to do as good of a job as it did, but just take a quick look at this card, for example. This Gassian Ditha, I don't know how to say that, you guys, but yeah, it's very reminiscent of like a Charizard card from base set, and it's even got like the same kind of foil patterns. I mean, you can so tell that this was heavily inspired by Pokemon, and old school Pokemon at that. The thickness of the cards, the overall cheesiness and vintage look of it, I mean, it is straight up inspired heavily by that type of thing, which I'm telling you, just a few years ago wouldn't have worked as well as it does now. I'm pretty sure of that, especially with the way that Pokemon went on an absolute tear in the year 2020 and into 2021, and it's of course come back down since then. But it's leveled out quite a bit, and Pokemon still has potential to run again, if not just stay stagnant for a few years, who knows. But Pokemon's not going anywhere. Is the point when it comes to Pokemon, that's not going anywhere. But MetaZoo is so new, and it's so speculative, and it's so aggressively speculative that, you know, I just wanted to get that out of the way first and foremost. The target audience is a key reason why it is as expensive or hard to get into versus some of the other card games of old and of new. That target audience, they knew what they were doing, and they nailed it. They hit the nail on the head, you know what I mean? The people with money who need that nostalgia and or want that nostalgia, and they want to speculate on these types of cards. They did such a phenomenal job of catering to that market right out of the gate. Now for long term, the question is, will the same target audience actually want to continue collecting and buying and speculating and investing in these cards into the long term? All right, now point number 2 is that this game is not dependent on an established franchise already. So that is actually, it's a double-edged sword in a way. So this MetaZoo thing, this is a brand new IP that these creators have come up with, and it's based around cryptid monsters currently in the United States, and I'm sure that they'll expand it internationally and maybe start making up all kinds of stuff as it goes on, because I just don't know how much further they can push that idea. That's kind of another point too, but it's not established on an already existing franchise. It's its own thing. So the inspiration for doing something like that would be like Magic the Gathering or Flesh and Blood. I think even Force of Will, that kind of counts too, right? That's not based off of something that already exists. So those types of endeavors, as a general rule, they tend to have more staying power than something that is based on a franchise. Unless you look at something like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! That are unicorns in that space. Pretty much every other card game that has been based on another IP has come and gone because you just run out of material eventually, unless it's a 20-year running anime and video game series. But that could be one of the greatest assets when it comes to this particular game and investing early. If, for example, the creators of MetaZoo were actually able to commission, say, a video game franchise or a toy line or a Netflix show or an anime or anything like that, they already have a comic book, so that's kind of cool. But if they were able to commission something with a lot of staying power and or market power for other audiences. So, I mean, this could reach children as well. I mean, it's definitely not, you can tell right away when you look at the cards, especially more in depth in the series and stuff, that it's not, it doesn't have a young audience at heart like Pokemon did, but it certainly can appeal to teenagers with no problem at all and could be considered quite fun if the creators of the game can actually establish something like a video game series or an anime or whatever. The sky is the limit in terms of the potential of the original cards, because this is where it all started, you know what I mean? So that would be a huge benefit. But what are the odds of that actually happening? You know what I mean? So that's where we've really got to put the things on a scale and weigh. Is it really likely that they're going to get a video game and or a TV show and all this stuff out of this property? Or is this going to be a flash in the pan type of thing that just stays a card game and fizzles out? I don't know. So for point number 3, this is actually really crucial to the investment potential for this product. And that is that the creators of the game so far, and it only has one set, really. I mean, there's the Kickstarter version and the first edition. At the filming of this video, the Unlimited set is not even out yet. So this is still the highly speculative phase and stage of this game. But as of right now, the creators do seem to understand the value of chase cards, rare cards, limited cards, things that will maintain and hold a collectability and value based around its collectability versus just its gameplay usage. So for example, they have 9 cards in the base set that are referred to as the Obnoxious 9. And what the Obnoxious 9 are, I'm going to do a whole video on that probably in and of itself. But in a nutshell, the Obnoxious 9 are 9 rare cards that are only available in standard holographic version. You cannot pull them as a reverse holo and or, you know, like a base rare or whatever. That's essentially what a reverse holo is. And not even, because it can be common, but anyway. The Obnoxious 9 cards are only available as a holo slot, which means you only get a holo, a genuine holo, at an average of 1 out of 30 cards, which is 3 packs. And the chances of it being an Obnoxious 9, you're only going to get 1 or 2 per box, if that, of that particular type. And that is a pretty big if that, you know what I mean? So those types of cards have good collecting potential just because of that level of rarity. And then you also have things like this, This dragon here is from the release kit box, and it is unique to there. So there's a very limited amount of these at the current time, and therefore they cost a pretty penny. We're talking anywhere from $50 to $100 depending on the given day and the market at the current time. And then there's even more exclusive things like the Rudy promo that he did for Alpha Investments, where there were only 1,000 kits, so there was one per kit, and it went out to 1,000 of his patrons, and that was it. He does have some extra copies of it, but he hasn't disclosed what he's going to do with them yet. But still, there's only like 2,000 in existence in the world, if that. So that kind of a card is rare, and hopefully will remain rare as long as they don't reprint it. And when it comes to the rarity and everything, I'm going to go ahead and say the thing when it comes to investing in the first edition boxes, there's a box topper pack inside of the first edition boxes that has the potential to contain a card that is essentially like an Illustrator Pikachu wannabe card for MetaZoo, and it's called like the Red Ink Monster. And those in the current market, and this game is brand freaking new, but the current market, they're like $5,000 for that card because there's only like, 175 or something in the world, and they're only available in the box topper pack in the box. Now, the thing with that is, and this is, somebody put this in the comment section if you know this or not, because I haven't gotten confirmation as of the filming of this video, but is that card going to only be present in the first edition printing, or are they actually going to add it into the unlimited box topper packs as well? Because if they add it into the unlimited box topper packs, it's going to completely destroy it. At least in my opinion, it will. I mean, maybe not completely. It won't be like $1 or whatever, but it will destroy the value of the first edition one, and it'll destroy the integrity of the collectability of the original first edition sealed boxes. For right now, that is the primary reason that the first edition boxes are holding the price points that they are. Like right now, as of the filming of this video, they're around $500 and climbing. That card alone and the ability to get it in the box topper slot is the reason for that, at least in my opinion. All right, so moving on to point number 4. Is the game more focused on collecting or playing, or both? How is the balance when it comes to the actual product and what it's intended to do? From my perspective, at least at this early into it, I'm thinking that they're definitely going for that collectability and playability, just like the original Pokemon trading card game did. Though Pokemon had a huge advantage when it came to collectability with the 151 original Pokemon and them all being unique little monsters and everything that you could collect, and it was a different thing. It was at a different level than MetaZoo is, and that's just my opinion. Obviously, I was there for it. I remember it very vividly and whatnot, that Pokemon had an entirely different type of feel than this in regards to the collectability of the cards, and especially the wide audience when you're talking about all the little kids and stuff that would get Pokemon and trade them on the playground and stuff. Whereas this is definitely, like I mentioned in part 1 there, in point 1, the audience is already for like older people in their late 20s and 30s and stuff, who theoretically are established with some money to spend, and they have the ability to speculate on this type of thing. That's a key difference between Pokemon and this. Pokemon was a far more organic launch that was based around collectability and playing the game and just having fun. This is much more of a speculative boom, if you ask me. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It has the potential. It really has the potential to continue going up, especially in the short term, depending on the moves that they make. But yeah, when it comes to this particular product, is it more based on collecting or playing? I would have to say for now, pretty much collecting, but the playing is going to absolutely play a big role into it as the expansions start coming out. So how balanced they can keep it throughout the duration of at least the first 5 years of its life cycle, we're going to have to see. They need to really walk a nice fine line between collectability and playability. Otherwise, it's going to get shaky. And very important on the balance scale discussion is point number 5. Can they continue making expansions for the game without power creep? especially for the first few years. The first 5 years of a game's life are crucial, and if power creep comes into play at any point in there and destroys the environment, the play environment for the game, then it will skew it heavily onto the collecting side, and you need the balance, and power creep is the death rot, the freaking gangrene of of a card game. Once it gets power creep, it's donezo, usually 9 times out of 10, unless they can somehow walk it back, which I can't think of an example where they've walked back power creep. It is the nail in the coffin for a card game. So are the creators savvy enough to recognize that it's a genuine threat and know how to avoid it? Power creep is essential to avoid. So I kind of touched on this point a little bit earlier, but number 6, the Kickstarter and first editions versus unlimited and future printings. From an investment standpoint, it makes the most sense that the Kickstarter stuff, which is already unobtainable for me, that's for sure. You have to be a high roller to afford the Kickstarter stuff. It is the alpha of alphas of this game in terms of the speculative market. It's insane, the value. But first edition is still achievable at this moment as of the filming of this video. This is August of 2021. The game's first edition set literally just came out this month, so you can still get it right now, but there is a premium on it. But my biggest question now, as a potential collector and wanting to expand into this and or not expand into this, is going to be what happens when Unlimited launches. Unlimited is going to be a huge red flag and or green flag for the speculative investors for this game. And I already mentioned it earlier, but in the unlimited printing of this, if they put that red ink promo card as a box topper, that's going to do detrimental damage, in my opinion, especially to the first edition sealed product, sealed boxes. It's going to be horrible, and that could be a very short-term potential thing that could mess it up for a lot of people who are speculating and pumping a lot of money into it right now. So that's just something that I want to say. Be aware of that. That could happen. But if it's not in there, if they don't do that kind of stuff or make other weird rookie mistakes when it comes to the unlimited printing, like literally printing it into oblivion, you know what I mean, and or changing up the contents and changing up the frequency of rares and foils and stuff, if they just leave it as it is, do a few more print runs for unlimited and move on, then, you know, that'll be okay. It really, how they handle the unlimited print run is going to really be a huge determining factor for the investability, if that's even a word, of the first edition print run stuff specifically. I will say that for Pokemon, the first edition stuff is, anything sealed from it is worth a ton of money just because there was such a limited amount produced. And that is actually very similar for MetaZoo. They took that kind of a strategy into consideration when making the first edition. It is very limited in its production. But, you know, how Pokemon had the shadowless first edition and all that kind of stuff that differentiated it, MetaZoo, I'm hoping, learns from that as well and has some sort of a differentiator between first edition and unlimited that makes the first edition product far more desirable in sealed form. It's a pretty big thing for me personally. I don't know about you guys, but I really need to see how they handle the unlimited release before I can start long-term speculating on MetaZoo. Number 7, and the final point, is the longevity of the actual game itself, especially when it comes to long-term investment. I'm talking 5 or more years when it comes to a trading card game, and there's a lot of different people out there with a lot of different definitions of what long-term is. So my personal one when it comes to trading card games, 5 years or longer, I would consider that long-term. When you get into things like Magic the Gathering, that's like 25, 30 years old, that's like ancient in the world of trading card games, and it is because it was the first one. But anyway, for MetaZoo, if it can sustain itself for 5 years and then hopefully into, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years and stuff, that's where you have the most potential for gain when it comes to a long-term investment strategy. Personally, I'm thinking right now, very short-term, free tendies kind of thing, but I'm also not a big enough player in this space that I've only got a few of these boxes. So I personally am just going to do a hodl because the long-term potential, if the cards pan out right, if they play their cards right and make this last for a while, these first edition boxes should hold up very, very well into the long term. But in the short term, they definitely stand to spike even more, and they will be some free tendies hardcore for anyone out there that bought a few cases of them. You're going to have a lot of chicken tenders this year. But yeah, when it comes to maintaining the game for 5 years or longer, that's going to be a huge challenge. Because when it comes to cryptid monsters, I mean, I'm no expert in cryptology or whatever, but there aren't that many of them. You know what I mean? I can only think of like 5 off the top of my head before I actually opened booster packs, which was like, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Mothman, the Jersey Devil, and I don't even know. The gray aliens, do those count? The little guys who probe you? You know what I mean? Like, does that count? Those are things like in pop culture that I can think of off the top of my head. But other than that, you got to really delve into the recesses of the field of cryptozoology, and that has its own little following, and there's like fun TV shows on History Channel and whatnot about it, but it's a much smaller audience, so that it's got to really appeal to a wider audience. They have to find a way to bring in more people, and that loops into the whole franchise point, where if they can actually make the franchise grow with video games and stuff like that, then the long-term potential, the sky's the limit. Plus just making up fake cryptids and stuff like that, using their imagination and whatever game mechanics they come up with as the game progresses. I mean, there's a lot of potential there, but there's also a lot of room for pitfalls and potholes. So that leads me into the wrap-up. So when it comes to the short-term investability, it definitely feels like it's there. It definitely feels like there is a lot of potential for some short-term gain here, whether it comes from the first edition sealed product or even speculating on individual cards. But I will say that people are so thirsty right now for success and for a taste of the free tendies that the speculative nature of this market is pretty staggering. It's really, I wouldn't say that it's unlike anything I've ever seen, but in my 20 years or so doing this stuff and focusing on these collectibles and stuff, it's pretty dang aggressive. It is like, it's a 9 on the scale to 10, you know what I mean? It's very rare that you get a new card that comes out, that red ink thing, and it's already worth $5,000. It's very rare for that to be the case. So even for short-term investing, like I said, I really do think that the unlimited print run is going to determine the direction for the next while in terms of just this base set. It's going to be either the red flag or the green flag that we need to see if it's time to go in a little bit heavier or if it's time to back off. But the problem is that in order to even hit the gas, you've got to really put some money in for speculation. $500 on a box at this point if you weren't able to pick them up when they were $100. And the freaking red ink thing, like that's one of those things that will go to the moon if they never reprint it, if it's not reprinted in first edition, if it's really only available in like there's only 175 in the whole world, and if the game takes off, if it gets a franchise, if it gets a game, if it gets a show, that red ink MetaZoo card right now that you could acquire for $5,000, I could see it easily being $100,000 or more dollars if the stars align for the product and that stuff actually happens. But if that stuff doesn't happen, that $5,000 bet could just go right into your Timmy's boxes of hopes and dreams kind of a thing. It could just fizzle to nothing. I mean, I'm talking like $100. Just somebody who may want it. If the game dies, if it doesn't last, if it's a flash in the pan kind of thing and it dies, that card's going to be $100 or less, no doubt. And most of the cards would be not worth anything if it's a flash in the pan type of scenario. So yeah, for short-term investment potential, there really is a lot at the moment, especially, and I'm talking like within the next 3 months or so. There's a lot of room to make some money, but mostly I will say, if you got in on it when they were $100 a box, then you're already in free tendies zone. It's going to be a little bit harder to get in at 500 and hope that it goes to 1,000 or something like that. There's probably better plays out there in the world of collectibles to make than doing that. So yeah, that really comes down to the long-term potential at this point. Is it worth it to buy a $500 box, hoping that long-term there'll be thousands of dollars in the future? That just depends on your financial situation and your risk tolerance level. You know what I mean? For me personally, I'm not really looking to add a ton more unless I get a good deal. If they start going down in price, assessing the market at the time that they're going down is going to be crucial, because if they're going down for for various reasons that we've already mentioned and stuff, and red flags are popping up everywhere, then it's probably going to be time to move on. You know what I mean? But I will say this game has impressed me more than I thought that it would. The quality of the cards is really good. The nostalgia feels are great. The game itself looks really fun. I've been reading through the rules and everything. I'll probably make a follow-up video about the rules and how to play the game just for fun. But yeah, it definitely has a lot of potential. It all comes down to how these creators handle their game moving forward. And my little piece of advice to them, if they're actually listening, if they found this somehow or whatever, or if you know them, however, if you can get it to them, they definitely should implement a reserve list or something like that. That's where Magic the Gathering actually did the right thing back in the day when it comes to keeping the value in the secondary market from an investment perspective, from keeping your cards rare and valuable. The reserve list is essential. I have a whole other video on this channel about the reserve list and a discussion on that for Magic. If you're interested, actually, I'll go ahead and put the link in the description. It's a discussion just like this one about the Magic reserve list, and it goes into extreme depth of where they went wrong and how they can right that ship. I'm far more knowledgeable on that than I am MetaZoo, as this is brand new, so this is all speculative. But, yeah. Having a reserve list or some sort of guarantee that they won't reprint certain versions of the cards or whatever to keep them rare. And I would start immediately with the red ink monster, if they haven't done so already. I've been ranting about it a lot. They may have already announced that. I don't know. I wasn't able to find anything on it. But again, if they did, please put it in the comment section, because I'm just unaware if they already have announced that. And if they haven't, they need to. That and the other short print things like the Rudy promos, the booth promos, the launch promos, all these things, there has to be some sort of confidence that they're not going to reprint it in an altered version or a common card in a starter deck in the future. That's the kind of stuff that will drive the game into the ground. It is not a good enough franchise for that kind of negligence and BS when it comes to the secondary market. Yu-Gi-Oh! Could pull it off because Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a popular brand outside of the card game itself, the physical cards. It had the anime. There were tons of people that watched that anime, and they would come in the card shop all the time and buy Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. There was a never-ending supply. This is much more of a niche market. It's much more catered to the investment side, and they need to keep that in mind. If they keep it in mind, we're going to be golden, guys. If they don't keep it in mind and they stray, yeah, it's probably not going to be pretty. And yeah, my 2 cents on it is that if you have the extra funds, if you want to have like a first edition box or two for a long-term investment, if you can gamble that money, why not? You know what I mean? But if it's too much of a risk, if it just doesn't make sense, then, it's really a coin toss at this moment in time in its history and in its infancy. It really is. Just because you pay $500 for it doesn't mean it can't go back down to $100. I've seen it many, many times. Or go to zero, for God's sake. I've seen it, so I know it happens. I absolutely know it happens in these speculative bubbles. I'm sure you guys do too, so just be careful out there. Make the right decisions for yourself. Again, this is not financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. Anything you do based on this information and or discussion is yours. So, yeah, I hope that you liked the discussion today. If you did, please do make sure to give it a nice thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'll probably be opening up more MetaZoo, talking about it a bit more, as well as, of course, sticking to the things that I love, like Magic, Pokemon, and Marvel cards, grading. I love card grading and submissions, reveals, all that kind of stuff. So if you're into that, definitely check it out on the channel, and I would love to have you on that subscriber list. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subs at this point. It would be great if you could help me out and sub. It's free. Anyway, thank you very much for coming by, and I hope to see you again next time. Take care.